Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Legal and Finance meeting for today, Wednesday, December 28th, 2022. Let's start with a roll call and determination of quorum, please.
Armstrong.
Here.
Roseland. Here. Nordstrom.
Here.
Solomon. Here. Jones.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. And I would welcome an adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Solomon and a second by Mr. Roseland. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now's the time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. Do we have anybody that would like to partake? Okay, then we will close public comment. Moving along, consent items 1 through 6. 1 is to approve the minutes. 2, let's go to Human Resources. Our Director, Nick Strout, welcome. Authorize the HR department to conduct an RFP, request for proposal, for the AFSCME 2023 wage study.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so in the contract that we came to an agreement with our AFSCME bargaining unit, we agreed to do a wage study in 2023. So the first step in this process is to get approval from this group to actually go out for that RFP. And then, of course, we will bring it back for approval once those proposals have been submitted back to us. So this is just a procedural step to allow us to start that process.
Discussion, any questions? Mr. Jones?
Thank you. I'm just curious about what an expected cost might be for something like this.
If I had to guess, we paid $80,000 for the non-union wage study, so I'm hoping that it's within that cost parameter. It's a larger group of employees, but about the same number of positions. So that's my hope. Fingers crossed, anyway.
And whose budget will that come out of?
That is a great question. It was budgeted in 2023. I know that was when Pauline was still here, and I don't want to put our interim finance director on the spot, but it was budgeted. I cannot tell you in which account, but I can tell you by Monday night.
Yeah, I think that'd be good for us to know, because it's a sizable amount of money, and since it's going to impact employees in every department, we
Right.
should know where that 80,000 is coming from.
Great question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Solomon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I direct a question to
Absolutely.
Director Strout, please? Mr. Strout, so one of the things as we consider this is the fact that are they not only looking at what the market is for positions, but also the metro areas, cost of living, and that sort of thing?
Yes,
So, for example, us in Denver may not be the exact
Right.
comparison.
Yes.
Is
and
that what are the criteria that I guess that you look for when you are looking at these RFPs in terms of quality and making sure we get not inflated data but accurate data so that we can be competitive?
Right, and that is a great question, and it's a rounded approach. The base of most municipalities is a survey of other municipalities, but then we also use upper Midwest metro area data. But then there's a term, and I will bring it to you again. I apologize, I'm not a compensation expert. It's geo-alignment, basically. So they take the cost of living for Denver, and if a job pays this much and it costs this much to live, they add a factor for each different community to level it with our wages and what it costs to live here. Okay. And so there's a factor that they put in for that specific question. We like to, when I said a rounded approach, you go out for with other communities like our size, you know, it's always Sioux Falls, Bismarck, Fargo, Billings, Casper, those type of areas. We send them a survey and ask them to send us what they pay for those positions, what their bands are. But then we also use publicly available data, which is more, that's the data that these companies will pay for access, and it's a large sum of money. But then it's all, not just municipalities, because we know we're not just losing people to other municipalities, we're losing them to, you know, Skoll Construction, Monument Health, Black Hills Corp, things like that. And so we're looking at the community data as well. And then we blend the two together, and we hopefully get some accurate information. Again, not inflated, but accurate. And then also bring it down or up compared to our cost of living.
And how often are you taking advantage of the information that Elevate Rapid City has at their fingertips?
We partner with them very closely. One member of my team is trained on their system. It changed names, so you'll have to forgive me. It's a 4-letter acronym, but it's their publicly available data, and they've allowed us access to that. So we're continually learning on our own, so we can keep this maintenance up. And so it's not just a drop and then nobody does anything with it. We can use data that's available to us through Elevate, and they're great partners because we're not experts, but they do have experts on staff that will assist us when needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. I'm going to go to our interim finance officer, Tracy Davis.
So yes, the budget for this wage study was included in the 2023 budget in the HR budget. Yep.
And I apologize, I wasn't sure if that landed in the mayor's office or in my office, so.
Any other discussion? Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to point of reference on this, this is just the RFP that we're trying to get established rather than trying to set up what the RFP looks like. We want to just do the RFP so that we can go move forward with what you folks are discussing at the next round. So let's, if we can, let's just concentrate on the RFP proposal right now rather than some of these other items that are being discussed at this point. So let's not get ahead of our skis. Thank you.
Exactly. And if I may take a moment, Director Strout, how long do you think it would take from start to finish to have this completed?
Well, when we get paper signed, and that's important because I'll have to bring it back to you for approval, and we get paper signed, then it's a 6-month process. So if I can do this in the first meeting in February, that would be my goal, but if procedure doesn't allow me, maybe it's a second meeting in February, it's 6 months beyond that. And why it's important we get going as soon as we can is then we have to negotiate 2024 wages based on the results of that. So I really would be in a panic if it was landing, November 1st and we only had a short window. So if everything goes well, I'm thinking a late summer, early fall arrival with that. That would give us 3 or 4 months to negotiate. And what's nice is we're just negotiating on wages. So all of the other things that bog us down, we won't have to worry about. But so yes, to answer your question, late summer, early fall.
Perfect. I think that's clear. Anyone else? Great.
Thank
Good
you.
questions. Thank you for your input. Did you have a question? Okay. Moving along to items 3 and 4, Parks and Recreation. Director Beegler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 3 is authorization to enter into a lease agreement with Nexstar Media. That's Kello TV. This is for a guy wire anchor they have for one of their antennas, which is located now on city property in the Skyline Wilderness area. So there is just a concrete base that supports the connection of this guy wire to the tower. And this is something that's pretty minor, but we wanted to make sure that we had it in an agreement and we had a certificate of insurance from them, and so that everyone is protected. So that's item number 3. Item number 4 is a renewal of the lease agreement with the Rapid City Boxing Club for services over their boxing entertainment and education at that facility. That's located over there on East Main, across from the Public Works Yard.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm not seeing anybody in the queue. Moving along to our City Attorney's Office, items 5 and 6. Director Landine.
I would
Jennifer Utter.
defer. Yeah.
Welcome, Ms. Utter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 5 is a request by Youth City Council. The advisors and members of the Youth City Council are present here if there are any questions by the board. But there is a request and supporting documentation to spend up to the full budgeted amount of $26,000 for training and travel to the National League of Cities. This was an event that did occur last year, and there's some information for the board, for the council, with regards to the circumstances of the request and how that's coming. There's also support from the county commission, and that will be formalized. Apparently, it's on the agenda to be formalized next week. So there is some reimbursement to the city. As with many, not reimbursements, but the flow of money doesn't come back and be accountable into that youth city council budget. So we just send them an invoice, they send us the money, and it goes into our general fund. So it doesn't, at least in the past, it hasn't tracked as a even reimbursement with this particular budgeted item. But this is a budgeted item and within the budget for the youth city council, which has been previously approved by this board. That's with regards to number 5.
Okay, great. Mr. Jones is in the queue. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure who to direct this to. I'll start with you if I may. So how many members of the council are planning on going, and how many adults will be planning on going?
I think some of that information is in the supporting materials, and so I'm just going to access that very quickly.
And it lists the cost breakdown and everything, but I didn't see in there where it said, you know, it says up to 8 and 2 adults. Is that the plan? Is to send 8 and 2?
Yes.
Okay, how will they be selected?
That is a process that they go through with Youth City Council, and I would just defer. Ms. Kiner, do you have information about that selection process?
We do have an application that those that are interested in participating, they fill out, and then from that application, the adult mentors for the Youth City Council, so Richie and I, Lloyd, Sean, we will sit down and review those applications and decide what 8 rise to the top. From there, we also take a look at once that is offered out, obviously there needs to be the commitment for school and home and jobs and things like that. And so we also have alternates just in case something doesn't go through. But yeah, and those decisions will hopefully take place within the next couple of weeks so that we can then work with the city office and start going forward with some of the travel arrangements.
Thank you. Why was that number decided on for 8 youth and 2 adults?
Well, because when you go in to register for the National League of Cities, I found out in the last year that actually their suggested amount of young people or youth representatives that attend per adult chaperone would be 1 to 4. And so, and we also found out that those chaperones cannot be elected officials. And so right now we have 2 non-elected officials that serve as adult mentors. And so we went with what NLC had suggested for any other community to do.
But dive a little more deeply into it, if I may.
Okay.
Why not 4 and 1? Why 8 and 2?
Well, what we would like to do is to get as many young people as possible to be inspired and receive the same kind of training and education. So when they come back here to our community, they can share out and engage in ways that will inspire others to also serve. So yeah, we went with that last year, and it was a really nice group. It worked really well. So.
I'm a big fan of taking students on trips. When I was a band director, we went on a major trip every 3 years, and I certainly know the benefits of travel for kids, and they get a lot out of it, what you expect to get, and then there's also so much more. So I'm not against the concept of our youth traveling, and I have great respect for our Youth City Council. I'll be honest, this is a tremendous amount of money to spend, and I kind of support it, but I need to be convinced. We're asking the taxpayers of both Rapid City and Pennington County to put out $27,000 to send people on a trip, 100% paid for by these organizations. And so, when we do that, I know there's a high expectation when a city council member or a city employee wants to take a trip on the city's dime or on the county's dime. You know, we need to know what's going on, why go, who's going to go, what we're going to get back out of it, how that's going to benefit our citizens, and so on. And so I am hopeful that we'll hear more about those things and why we should proceed with this. I'm done for now. I'd like to reserve my time. Thank you.
To Richie Nordstrom, he is the liaison for the Youth City Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Utter, and thank you, Ms. Kiner, for the information that you've provided for us. But would you do me one other additional favor before I get into my comments? Could you introduce the students that are present here, or if they would like to introduce themselves? And if they went on the trip last year, would you let us know about that as well? Come on over to the microphone and I am pleased to be the liaison for this group, and we exchange a lot of ideas and a lot of information, so hopefully they're learning a little bit something from us, and then I know I'm learning a lot from them. So go right ahead, folks.
Okay, so I'm Jigger Parks. I'm a member of the Youth City Council, and I have not gone on the DC trip yet.
Okay.
I'm Megan Stagner. I am a senior at Stevens, and I did attend the trip last year.
I'm James Ross. I'm a sophomore at Stevens. I did not attend the trip last year.
I'm Ioana Matute. This is my first year in the Youth City Council. I'm a sophomore in Stevens, and I have not gone on the DC trip last year.
I'm Alex Vonderau. I'm a senior at Rapid City Christian, and I unfortunately did not go on the trip last year.
Thank you. What I'm interested in right now is that the benefits that we got to see from you folks that attended last year's conference, and then I joined several of you at a couple of breakout sessions, if that's what they're called, where the Youth City Council actually got together from the United States and exchanged several ideas, and I thought there was good proposals. So would you mind just taking a couple minutes there to share what your experience was at the Youth City Council portion of the National League of Cities?
So I'd say the major thing that I got out of it is being on the Youth City Council. I mean, that's one thing. You get to be involved in city government work, but going on the trip, it's a completely different level of commitment and what you get to do and see. I learned so much about just different structures. Like, I remember the big breakout section, the big breakout session I went to was about water infrastructure. And my partner, she's not on the council anymore, but she had a lot of information to give about that. There was a lot about youth homelessness. There's a lot about drug addiction. Trying to think of the word. Just like affordable housing, what we can do for that, just nationwide.
Housing.
And these are all things that we know they exist in the city, but being able to experience them firsthand and talk to people that do experience them way worse than we do, it's just an eye-opening experience for South Dakota kids who don't get to see this stuff every day.
And if you can bring out one more thing from you, if I may, is that you got a chance to visit with the congressional delegation in D.C. in their offices. Did you get that opportunity?
I did, yeah.
Yes. So you got to see several, the congressional delegation from South Dakota.
Yes.
Yes. Go, if I may hear from another student that actually got to go to the National League last year. She was the only one? Okay. Yep, sorry. Okay. Thank you for letting me put you on the spot.
Thanks.
It's a great benefit for the Youth City Council to get this opportunity. And for me, the biggest thing was getting to see them participate in some of these workshops that were at the National League of Cities. Plus, they got to go into the congressional delegation offices, and I've never been able to do that except for years ago when I was on a different mission. So, so I'm somewhat jealous that you folks got to see the congressional delegation and their offices and so on. So, Ms. Guiner, have you got anything else to add on?
No, other than, young people inspire me. And I got to tell you, they were on fire after attending this conference. Some of them that weren't able to attend today or they're off, at college somewhere, they've talked about possibly going into politics as far as a career, running for offices. They felt inspired and knew they could do it because they did hear from, our congressional delegation, all of them. We got to spend, that was a whole day actually on Capitol Hill, so that was exciting. When the inspiration that happened there was amazing, and it's something that I hoped to have happened, but when they came back, it was tenfold what I was expecting. The other thing within the application that we do ask is how are they going to share this with their community? How are they going to share this with, the city council? And so that is an expectation too with attending this conference, that they bring it back to the city. They also bring it back to the Youth City Council and actually the county. So there are some additional commitments that we have for them too with that application.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate the presentations you gave last year. And one final guest, if I may, is Commissioner Lloyd LaCroix. If you would give an idea of what this letter of commitment that should be coming forward. I hope it's coming forward.
Yes, we pretty much did this as a handshake a couple of years ago. Partnering with the city on this, I talked to the mayor and I talked to our sheriff, and we split the budget, the $30,000 for this, because we felt it important, and we did it at the budget time, so it's underneath the sheriff's budget, and we agreed to it. So that's what I wanted to bring forward. So as Jennifer brought this up, it was like last minute, let's put it back on our agenda and do the letter of commitment, but it was brought up at budget time. Because one of the requirements that we had when we decided to do this with the Youth City Council is that they come present to us at budget time. We do our budgets a little bit different than you guys do. The departments come forward with their budget and their requests, and we listen to them, we hear them, and then we go over them. And so what we did is we had the Youth City Council do the same. So they came, gave a presentation of the Washington, and it's a request because it's not a given every year. Sheriff's budget could get cut or have to lower down, so you have to do it on a yearly basis, and so that's what we're doing. But the partnership with this is not only the city and the county, but it's also the school. Kristen's wages are in this, and that's how this all started out. So it's a whole community thing, when you got city, county, and school. So it's very important. And if you hadn't had the chance, when they came back last year, they gave a press release and talked about what they did and the experiences that happened in DC. It was mind-blowing. 3 youth had changed their minds about the directions where they wanted to go in their life. And the great thing about this Youth City Council, this trip to DC specifically, is it's an application process. We young people from all walks of life. It's not just the A students. We've got some youth that had went that would have never been able to go on their own and experiences. So that is the key part, because that'll be the life changer in their moment in life. So, but we will get this agreement with you. But it's on our commission meeting at 9 in the morning, and you guys are at night. So we'll send it to you, or I'll hand deliver it, one or the other.
Thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate especially the partnership that you folks have been able to work together on. And so I'm hoping that the council will approve this full measure, and looking forward to hearing reports back from you folks on your trip to DC as well. So stand by, more homework assignment for you. Thanks, folks. I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Mr. Jones, you're on.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Interested to hear the comment about this as a whole community thing. The 5 students that are here right now, there are 4 from Stevens High School and 1 from Rapid City Christian, but we don't have any representation from Central High School or St. Thomas More. So I don't see the whole community represented here, and I'm curious as to why there aren't any students from the other 2 high schools in town involved.
Well, and to be honest with you, the holiday break really caused a little bit of turmoil with getting people here and committed today. But we do have young people serving from Central, St. Thomas More, Rapid City Christian, Stevens, and we just had, in this past year, we did have somebody resign from Rapid City High School. So it is well-rounded representation within our community.
Okay, I just think that that's important that be on the record. So we know that it is, in fact, representing all of our schools, all of our youth in town, and not just the wonderful folks who are here today, because you guys are wonderful. I'm very proud of you and love the fact that you're involved. But I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity for all the students in Rapid City to be involved, and not just the ones here. So thank you for that clarification.
If I may jump in just real quick, I'm one of the co-founders of the Youth City Council. Before we move forward on this, before this was codified, that was one of my main sticking points. We needed to be inclusive, and what was not mentioned, homeschool. Homeschool children or students are allowed to participate. So it's, just to clarify, it's 8th grade through 12th grade. We take rolling applications year-round, and I also serve on the selection committee, so we do strive for as much diversity as possible. It really just comes down to the students that apply, and we will defer to the Youth City Council to have them share their experiences. I'm also on the, what is it called? The exit interview. I do that as well to see what the good aspects are and what are the areas where we need to improve. So like us, we're always striving to do better. And I'll stop at this point because Mr. Solomon's in the queue, and then I'll follow up with that. Okay?
When I get the end of my time?
Oh, did you have more to say? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'll go
And
back
just,
to you.
extremely important, but I don't remember what it is now. If I think of it, I'll come back in.
Okay. I'm
Apologize.
sorry. Mr. Solomon.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Mr. Jones.
Music teachers, we kind of lose it over the years, don't we, Mr. Evans? Yes. If a student has already gone once, then they don't get to go a second time. Is that correct?
Clarify the question. Serving on the Youth City Council?
No,
Oh,
if they've gone on the
to
trip to Washington already, they don't get a second opportunity, right?
It is a consideration that we will be taking into, into account, I guess. We haven't had that before, and so it all just kind of depends on who applies and what, they're hoping to gain from it. We also take a look at the engagement that they have within projects within the community. So it's not just a trip and one and done, and that was exciting, but how they've been engaged in committee and projects throughout the year, so.
Right. I think that's very important because this is a great opportunity and it has to be for the right people. And I don't want to send 8 people and 2 adults just to fill 10 spots. I think they need to be the right 8 people for all the right reasons. And it sounds like that's the direction you're going, that it would certainly be the right people. I just really want to underscore that. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sure.
Mr. Solomon, you're on. Sorry about that.
Well, first of all, it's awesome that you're so engaged. I think I'm very impressed by just the fact that you're doing this when you could just be playing video games or hanging out at home right now. But thanks for being here and for just being involved with the process. Thank you all for your leadership. I do have a couple of questions. I think first to you, ma'am. Have you considered other leadership conferences other than NLC? I mean, there are lots of options and peer trips, and I mean, I'm trying to think of all the experiences they could have. This is one. It's a major one, but have you considered others?
I really like that question because, as these guys here, sitting here, would say, This was on their agenda for like 2.5 months. In December is when they made the decision that this was the conference that they wanted to move forward with. There has been conversation about other leadership conferences, or also knowing that there's a youth program with NLC. That's always kind of a bonus, so that they can talk with their peers about what's going on in their community, how engaged they are with their city council and with the decision-making body and stuff like that. So they're the ones that made the final call, but it was definitely a 2.5-month process.
Okay, so it's a process, which is good. Now, do we just take the information that's given and just said that's the only way, or do we have debate and discussion on some of the things they learned? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you had something on gun violence, and none of us want gun violence, obviously. But there are different schools of thought. There are people who are very pro-Second Amendment that are say, but don't touch the guns. It's about, the criminals, not the gun itself. There might be others who say, confiscate all guns. You could see how those kind of debates and sessions could have various points of view. But that might be that speaker's point of view, but that's not maybe necessarily everybody's point of view. So I'm curious how you use this as an educational opportunity.
Well, the reality is, in the Youth City Council discussions, there is amazing civil discourse that takes place. And in fact, there are times when I have chills and when I have tears about what they're talking about, because they are extremely respectful and polite with each other when they disagree, but yet they hear each other out. Now, does that happen every single meeting? No. But when there is those kind of hot button, and especially actually during COVID, is when we had a lot of those hot button conversations.
Us too.
Yeah, yep. So anyway, but the way that they respect each other in that civil discourse and those discussions, absolutely amazing, and something that I truly believe adults can very much learn from. And we would love to have as many of you as possible come and attend our meetings. Now, the other things that have been brought forward, because we do let the Youth Council really move forward on the projects that are important to them, they have talked about having different youth forums or panel forums within the community so that they can also gather additional information from the community. They also, the Youth City Council currently has been invited to some of the human relations committee and MOA, and some of those panel discussions. And so they've also participated in those things. And, we're always open to additional debate. In fact, we've got a lot of young people that serve on debate and stuff too. So it's all about the discussion and learning in that process. When they brought things back, what I saw is they wanted to get in and they wanted to move mountains. And with those mountains, it also would include you guys and the City Council, and how the Youth City Council can be probably even more engaged in the work that you're doing and in the budget process. They learned from other youth city councils about how engaged they are, and I do know that they were inspired to do that. Now, that was after 1 year, so be ready, because you never know what they're going to propose or how they might want to try to implement things to be more engaged with, the full city council. So.
And I think it's good, because sometimes you could say homelessness is an issue. The question is, what should the government's role be in that? What should nonprofit? Those are philosophical questions. Sometimes at 18, I might have viewed differently than I do at 45 right now. But Mr. LaCroix, may I direct a question to you, if that's all right? You mentioned you all are having a meeting at the county commission to match up to half of this.
Yes.
You feel pretty confident that's going to go through?
Yes, I do. They already presented a budget. It's in the sheriff's budget already. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident.
So I wonder for us, if we make any motion, if it should be contingent, that we say we'll match whatever the county does, up to whatever a certain amount is. I think if we have that contingency in there, just so that makes sure that, that puts it on you a little bit, but we want to make sure that this is a shared partnership, I suppose, with us and the school district as well, that we all have skin in the game here to invest in the next generation. So
Driving down here, that was the thought of a good motion.
that's what you guys would do, wouldn't you?
Sure,
It's what
yeah,
you would
we'd do the same thing. You know, we'd approve it with contingent of approval from the city or the
Yep.
county. And I think it's just a formality. Can I take a moment to address a
Yes,
little
sir.
bit?
Go ahead.
You know, one of the other things these guys have done when you talk about some other service in the community is they came down to the county and toured the care campus, the jail, that went into the jail, got to see a lot of that stuff going on. A lot of those youth at that point in time had no idea what the county did. You know, they didn't know 911 was there, and the center down there, their emergency response room, and they did that tour, and they did the same thing with the city. They toured your guys' waterworks department and everything else, so they're really getting out there and involved in the community and learning what's happening. So
That's excellent. I have no doubt it's a worthwhile the program. I think for us, just making sure that we are being responsible. So I think I'd support this if we had a contingency on the county pitching in their portion. Thank you.
Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a problem with that either, but I will look to Jennifer Utter to give us some advice on that, and on that, shall I say, proposal that's in front of us right now. It looks favorable to me, but I'd like to hear from what your thoughts are on it as well.
And, sir, is that with regards to the wording of a motion, or please clarify your question?
It's the way I'm understanding the proposal. It's not a motion yet, but the proposal is that it would be contingent upon what the county does. So,
And in the supplemental information that's before this committee, the Youth City Council did have a line item breakdown of this, but they had gone over their budget amount, so they're requesting up to $13,500 authorization with a match. However, to expend the full $26,000 would just be cut that in half, so $13,000.
and then it's a reimbursement as well.
That's correct, and then we would just invoice, you know,
Yep.
the full amount could be contingent, and we would just invoice the county as we have done previously.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to make sure we're comfortable with the language that's coming out of this. And then, yeah, sure. And then one other thing is that for Ms. Kiner, if I may, is that we also did a Zoom with Wyoming, and that was one of the other activities that we did. Care to explain how that works within the, I don't know, in this case, it was no budget item, there was no expense item to that item, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. What we are finding is the longer that they are around, the Youth City Council is active, the more invites that they're getting from other youth city councils. Wyoming started their council after they heard about the Youth City Council. The Youth City Council initially helped to provide some support to them to get things started. And since then, they're already at a stage where they are creating their own conference where there's different youth city councils within the state of Wyoming that are invited to this conference. We were invited last minute, like 3 weeks prior to the actual conference date. And at that time, we weren't able to go because we didn't have the transportation and the funding and everything lined up for that. But that could potentially be a different conference that we could attend over the summer or in the future. And so NLC is not the one and only, but depending upon the budget and what we can come in at. I know last year we asked for $23,000, and I think we spent about $16,500 on attending in DC, so we came under budget. We're hopeful that we're able to do that again this year, but we did increase some of the cost just because of the inflation we're all dealing with. So if there are leftover funds, obviously we want young people to feel empowered and learn from other communities and with other conferences. So did that answer your question?
Yep, it sure does.
Okay.
And I think that addresses part of the expense as well. And then Just stay tuned. I'm going to try to get a hold of Sioux Falls to see if we can't do something with them and start off with a Zoom conference with Sioux Falls, because I believe they've got some kind of arrangement with their youth as well. I'm not sure that they call it a youth city council, but it's some fashion of youth engagement. And I know other cities are interested, but whether they've actually been able to follow through within South Dakota and the municipal leagues. So it's something to take of interest for that. So stay tuned. We got lots of activities. I have ideas that are coming forward, so I appreciate it. And I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to add just a few more comments. To address Mr. Solomon's concern, I'm going to direct some questions at the current Youth City Council members. There aren't any adults telling you what to say and do, are you right? This is youth guided. We have our mentors, Ms. Kiner, Mr. Binder, who's way in the back, who has not been acknowledged. Thank you for your help. And of course, Mr. LaCroix. We're there just kind of for guardrails. We have Mr. Nordstrom's liaison work, helping them along as well. But this is completely youth guided, and frankly, it's very inspiring to watch. And I just want to say that you continually impress me with the representation and the collaboration, and you demonstrate true leadership within Rapid City. And you also, as we stated, inspire other municipalities to participate in nonpartisan positive civic engagement. And I think that is the crux of what you do. And I personally am humbled and grateful for what you do. You do inspire us. I think we're going on our third year, and I have repeatedly encouraged our current council members to attend one of their meetings or some of their meetings. They meet the second Tuesday of every month at 6:30 in these chambers, and I don't know if you notice, but we have at least one and usually two Youth City Council members at our Common Council meetings, and they report back at their Youth City Council meetings. So if you want to reciprocate those efforts, I'm sure that they would appreciate seeing us there supporting them as well. I think I'll stop talking now on this. Oh, Mr. Evans, councilman from Ward 2.
Yes, since I'll be asking it on Monday if I don't ask, or Tuesday if I don't ask it now. Mr. Solomon's question does bring up another question, and that is that, are the programs we send the kids to specifically sponsored with the purpose of youth city councils? Because I believe this all came about because of the sponsorship by, or the idea that was put forth and sponsored by the National League of Cities to involve youth, right? That's where the idea of youth city councils came from, or did it evolve in a different way? Because I don't think we should be sending kids to conferences just because that. I think it should be programs that are specifically keyed toward governmental processes to educate the youth toward that thing, making it completely nonpartisan. And so I'm just curious where that all came about, because I'm pretty sure the National League of Cities has a program specifically dedicated toward that goal of educating youth toward government, and it has nothing to do with policy. It has to do with process. And so are there any other groups out there that actually have an educational bent that way in terms of process, not policy? Because I worry about sending people off to things that maybe, you know, engage a certain and activate a certain constituency that may like them attending something. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with the National League of Cities at all, because I feel it's a nonpartisan organization that brings everything together. But I could see where this could evolve into something that could be used in a very detrimental way and cause hard feelings. So, Richie may know where it all came about. I don't know, you were at the germinal stages of it. Where did the whole idea of going to National League of Cities come from? Because they sponsor youth programs, correct? That's my question.
I'd say it came from the students. I'll defer to Ms. Kiner or Mr. Binder.
Well,
or Mr. LaCroix.
Yeah. Well, the starting of the Youth City Council, a couple of young people wanted to make it happen. We attempted, the first time we attempted, it didn't rise to the top of being approved. The second time that young people brought it forward because they didn't want to give up on it, that is when more action happened. Everything that was done, and Mr. Binder has worked with National League of Cities and helped other cities to form youth city councils and also focus on the youth engagement portion of like their community plans and things. So we brought Mr. Binder also into the discussion so that our proposal looked a lot more professional. Now, as far as the national conference, yes. A lot of the wording that we've used to get our youth city council started came from the National League of Cities and how to get youth city council started, because we're like, well, they say, and they're providing support to cities across the nation. They say these things help and work in engaging youth city councils. So yes, they have been from the beginning. Sorry, I've got that teacher voice that I just want to. But anyway, they have from the beginning been part of the entity that we have looked at for guidance because they do have a youth program. They do encourage all cities to have youth city councils. In fact. We got off last year, we got off the plane, we dropped our bags, ran across the street because at 5 p.m. there was all of the youth city council reps were meeting. It was amazing that young people from across the nation heard from South Dakota, had never heard from South Dakota youth before, and so as a result, and we had a young person from our youth city council that sat on a panel in that youth program because they were inspired and excited to get going. So, did that answer your question? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Great discussion. I love this. This is awesome. Okay, any more comments on this, on item number 5? Okay, and we'll kind of dovetail into number 6. Ms. Utter, do you want to follow up with this one?
Thank you. Item number 6 is the result of this council previously authorizing the city attorney's office to propose to this council a resolution to adjust the authorization of the funding. And so what this most recent resolution does is permit the mayor, and we're requesting that the mayor be authorized to sign this resolution that permits the mayor to review and have the authorization approval duties for anything less than $1,000 in expenditures. And just like they're here before you on a potentially $26,000 expenditure, anything $1,000 or more would come before the full council. That's very simply it.
Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, that one of the situations that came up is because of the opportunity to go Wyoming is why this was brought forward and without the, because of the short notice that was the invitation to go to Wyoming Youth City Council Conference is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that this is brought forward. And one other thing that I feel is that these folks have been under probation for at least a year for doing their budget. And there's a lot more training that we have to do on how the budget process works, and this will give them an opportunity to actually work over their budget a lot closer now rather than taking it piecemeal. And now they've got to do some actual planning. And I think this is a good effort for a starter, and so taking that in consideration, they've been under probation and for at least a year, and it looks like they know what they're doing at this stage, and we'll continue with the advisors' support on this as well. So we have those guardrails in place yet remaining. Thank you.
Grateful for your guidance, Mr. Nordstrom. I will welcome a motion to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Nordstrom. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving to item number 5, authorize Youth City Council to expend up to the full budgeted amount of $26,000 to attend the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference 2023. Mr. Solomon.
Well, my recommendation would be to authorize this expenditure for an amount up to $13,000, which would, matching the county up to $13,000. So for example, if the county decides for $10,000, then we would give $10,000. But if they give the full 13, then we will pitch in the full 13. Okay.
Everybody comfortable with that? Yep. Great. We have a motion by Mr. Solomon, a second by Mr. Jones. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. Thank you. Moving on to number 7. Direct City Attorney's Office to draft a resolution to prohibit the use of TikTok on all city-issued devices, restrict access to TikTok on city networks, and prohibit city accounts on the TikTok platform. Mr. Solomon, you're on.
Okay, well, first of all, I will just make the motion to approve this, if I could get a second and retain the floor, unless anybody's not ready. All right, we got a second from Rosalind. Not to rehash, but there's an attachment to this, as well as an email I've sent out to you, and as well as comments in previous meetings. This is simply us following the lead from the federal government and our state government in prohibiting TikTok on government devices, as well as networks and accounts. We actually know that the United States Senate unanimously approved a ban on TikTok on government devices. I would like to think that if the United States Senate can unanimously agree on something, so could the council. We also know that the state has taken action. So those are the reasons why this is on here. This is not on here because of we don't like TikTok and we just randomly put it on there. It actually has to do with a national security concern of who owns it, which is ByteDance, who's a Chinese-based company, and there is a law that requires them that if they are requested to provide information on their users and all the data that they have to the Chinese government, that they have to do so. As our congressman told me, this was a smart move because TikTok is not our friend. This does not have anything to do with our employees misusing TikTok. In fact, we have very dedicated employees, and it's really important that we share that this is not a reaction because of misuse by our employees. They're great. This is a preventative action. 2, this is not because of our stance on social media. Perhaps there's all sorts of issues with all the other social media companies and platforms, but this is specifically about this one because of who owns it and where they're based out of. There's a reason why the federal government has taken action. The House of Representatives have also passed a similar ban for federal employees. The state of South Dakota has issued an executive order prohibiting this for state employees. A number of other states, I think 16, have banned it. We have even legislatures who have done so. So you see from the executive branch to legislative branches, there's been action taken. I simply, out of logic of reading months and months of information from the federal government. We have FBI warnings, FCC warnings. Now we have Senate and House of Representative action. We have states taking action. It just seemed logical to me that the city should do the same. So that's why it's put on here. It is not about what our opinion is of whether social media is good or bad. That's not what this is about. This is a security issue that I did not invent. There is lots of sources. I've linked to a number of articles, and there's plenty more I haven't linked to. So I've produced the receipts of why we should take action. I guess I would say anybody who would oppose to it, I would encourage you to produce the receipts of why we should keep it. And so I think it's pretty simple right now. We actually don't have a resolution. This is simply turning it over to the city attorney's office to craft a resolution in conjunction with our IT director to make sure it's worded properly, and then bring it back to the council for approval or denial. So I guess I'll leave it at that for right now. I stand by for any questions or comments. Thanks.
Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a substitute motion to make this a policy rather than a resolution. If I can get a second on that for discussion purposes.
May I ask a clarifying? I don't believe we can only do a resolution or an ordinance. but did you want to create a resolution to create a policy? Is that what you're asking? Because I don't believe we can take any actions other than a resolution or ordinance. Might need city attorney guidance.
And or ordinance.
You could do
We
that.
can't create policy.
Let's do that.
That's too far down the
We don't have the power.
Okay. I'll look through the city attorney for consultation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're getting a little too technical here. Technically, anything that the council does is either an ordinance or a resolution. If you adopted a resolution preventing TikTok, that would, by definition, be a policy of the city. So, I know we recently did an effort through HR. One of the problems is we have all these resolutions and they're not really stored anywhere, and so after a certain period of time they seem to get forgotten. So I know we've taken some previous resolutions and we've compiled them into a policy manual. It seems to me if you want to adopt a policy to prohibit TikTok, that would go in that, so everyone would be aware of it, and it would be one of the city policies. You would adopt that policy through a resolution. So I think it's a distinction without really a difference.
Thank you. I'll make that withdrawal at this point, but I would like to keep the floor open for additional discussion. The consideration that we need to take into advisement is that the Civic Center requires from the vendors the request that they use TikTok. So it's one other area that needs to be considered. There is, my biggest concern is this is going to turn into whack-a-mole. And if people don't know what whack-a-mole is, Google it and it'll explain what whack-a-mole is, because it's so centered on one issue because of other things that are taking place on social media. And there is other social media that is controlled by the Chinese government. So it's something else to take into consideration. And as one of our colleagues stated at the council meeting the other night, is that it is taking this particular social media and disallowing it, but approving all the others that are okay out there, and making that appearance that the others that should be questioned as well are okay at this point, and I'm not comfortable with that. So the other thing that came up with with Councilman Solomon's receipts, as he calls them, is that there are other issues that came up in that Director Fry has put forward, is that he did not make a recommendation that we do the banning. What he said is a great concern, plus he included other concerns as well. That we got, and if you get to see the video on what Director Fry actually said, please do the Google thing as well. And plus, I've done some research on what Director Fry of the FBI also said at a University of Michigan Gerald Ford public policy event. Got to talk to the students and faculty at the Gerald Ford Public Policy, was recommending that all of this get sent over to CFIUS, which is a committee on foreign investment in the United States. So with that in mind, that is in progress as well at the congressional level. And then there is an executive order coming from the president as well that it needs to be taken a look at, not just TikTok. And this is maybe a good start to do this, but there are other considerations that need to be made as well. I'm not sure what else that other departments need for social media to review, and I'm thinking of the police department, but I don't know what their standards are for looking at or needing to review TikTok as far as those things that they need to do in their detective work. So, and there's a variety of other issues that I could also link to the agenda for Monday night. But I think Mr. Gilbert, Director Gilbert, made some comments about in a letter as well as the what needed to be done as far as the security side of it for the cybersecurity for the entire city, rather than just I still have to come back and call this whack-a-mole. And we're only dealing with one issue, and when there's several that need to be addressed. So with that, I'll stand by for other questions or comments, but I think we're just looking too narrow-minded on this.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Chairman. The reason I agreed to moving it to discussion here was twofold. I wanted to know what departments rely on it as a public information device, and two, would we lose any transparency or the ability to communicate with the public if we didn't have TikTok? Those are my two concerns. And so I would like to know from any of the department chairs who are here if they can answer that question. And then I also want to know from police and fire and any departments who aren't here their response to these two questions. Because to me, that's what it boils down to, is, you know, do we rely so heavily on TikTok as a city that we would be losing transparency to our constituents if we got rid of it? I would be shocked if the answer was yes. I don't see the city use of TikTok taking place on much of a regular basis. I'm not a TikToker. My dance videos weren't accepted to be on TikTok, so we had to revamp it. That's another story for another day. But yes, so that's probably good for the community. But I need to know if that's taking place. I don't think we rely on TikTok that heavily. Do we communicate with it since it is one of many forums that are out there? Probably. But would we lose transparency and lose the ability to communicate with the public if we got rid of it? I really, really don't think so. And again, I would be shocked if that was the case. I disagree with my colleague who said that we're doing whack-a-mole here. The other social media devices are out there doing their thing, good, bad, or indifferent. But I agree that TikTok is a whole different animal, and that, you know, it's not a mole. It's you know, it needs to be whacked, in my opinion. I don't see a lot of good that comes from TikTok to benefit the city's use, and I concur. I've thought a lot about this as an HR person right now. I look at what would take place at the major home improvement and hardware store that I work at on north part of Haynes Avenue. If there was a problem with someone using a device owned by the company for social media. And there are items identified in the handbook and that kind of thing as to what could take place. We don't have access to any of those things at work, so if someone tried to or whatever, there would be issues. But I think TikTok's a whole different animal, and I agree with Mr. Solomon that since so many of these places and people have said it should go away, that I think, I mean, I support the idea of moving forward with it and seeing what a resolution would look like, and then I'm sure we would receive public comment on it and see if that was the thing to do. But I don't think it hurts us to take the first step and look at it and see. We have tried to create resolutions and or ordinances and brought them forward on topics, and people have said nothing, or people have responded resoundingly, and that has helped us make good decisions. And so I can support the idea of moving it forward to the council, the full council. I would like, police, fire, public safety there, and I would like them to respond, be prepared to respond to my questions. What departments rely on it as public information device, and would we lose any transparency to the public without TikTok? The question about the monument needing it to operate from a business standpoint, I would like to know from the director of the monument as to what role that they have to use it and what role their vendors require, because there may be a way to make that work. But I would like our other council or department leaders to be able to respond to that question at our council meeting next Tuesday night. Thank you.
I believe our IT director would like to weigh in. Director Gilbert.
Thank you. In response, Mr. Jones, to your question, I have talked to the other directors. Fire uses it as primarily an information and recruiting tool, as does the police. They're not heavy users by any mean. I do know that Solid Waste Division uses it, again, as an educational tool. And I know that the marketing division over at the Monument uses it quite heavily, generally to push pre-prepared advertisements or bumps, if you will, to it for shows that are coming in, sent to them by the promoters. Those are the use cases I've heard of. To your larger question about does it hurt the city's transparency, I believe that is a difficult question to answer in terms of what content is put on there now. I would caution that it is easy to look at a particular platform and say, I don't use it, therefore, what difference does it make? But it is also important to recognize that demographic shift within social media. For people, old people like me, we are primarily on Facebook, and then the next generation of social media users are more of an Instagram. But for every one new user or for every 5 users that are on TikTok in the demographic of 14 to 25, I believe the number that are on Facebook is less than 1. So when you want to look at a demographic shift, social media does tend to follow demographic lines in terms of age. So I'm always cautious of cybersecurity from a platform of an outright denial. Cybersecurity is a spectrum approach. It's a way to mitigate risks, and I certainly will look. And I don't disagree with this passing, but I would look to do this as a policy that's integrated into our cybersecurity policy, which would include things like exceptions. We would have documented exceptions for PD, possibly for the Monument. And then the way you handle that through good IT cybersecurity governance is that policy and those exceptions are reviewed periodically, 6 months, year, whatever time frame you put on it, so that at any one time, I, as the director of IT, would be able to come back here and give to you an exact example of who has those exceptions, what they're for, how often they're used, and why. So that to me is the bigger issue. Whether we have TikTok or not, I don't do the social media for the city. That's done by the public information officer. So that's not where I fall on this. What I fall on is protecting the data of the city and the data of the citizens that they have so graciously allowed us to have within our possession. So certainly in terms of my overall standpoint for security, if it is decided by this council to block TikTok, it will be handled by our department much the same as any other perceived threat to our environment that we have. So that to me is the bigger thing. Is the resolution to ban TikTok will then be morphed into the cybersecurity policies that we use day to day in order to protect the very important data that is in our charge.
Thank you, Director Gilbert. And if I may, I'd like to add some comments. I think this was brought forward because we have some concerns about information gathering or sharing or selling of data. As I stated before, Facebook does it too, Instagram, as well as other social media platforms. I've yet to see any evidence that we're being hacked or our information's being stolen or spied upon or taken. So with lack of evidence, it's almost like Chicken Little. Sky's falling, and I don't see it. This has not been presented to any of us, correct? That there are these instances happening. If I may correct you, Mr. Solomon, you said there were 14 states. There's actually only five states, including ourselves, so just 4 others. And my understanding, talking with professionals at the School of Mines of Technology, as well as Dakota State University, which is number 3 in the nation for cybersecurity, they're not enacting these measures as well, and I would go by their leadership, given that this is what they do. They have shared with me that the TikTok, again, I'm not a professional, but it goes through Oracle, which is a US-based server before it goes through ByteDance. So they have upped their cybersecurity measures as well. The city is using this for civic engagement and to enhance communications, which I unfortunately feel we are lacking in. So anytime we can communicate more, especially with the youth that use this, I think it's a good thing. It promotes events, it provides education, and once again, it's information sharing. I don't think our role as council members is to micromanage each department or HR, and we need to trust these professionals and our directors that they are going to handle these potential issues. Haven't seen one yet, but handle these issues. So I suggest that we all take comfort and pride in the fact that our last council meeting, we passed a resolution enhancing cybersecurity. I think that's where it should just start and stop, and defer to the professionals and let them do that. We have a social media policy in place, correct, Director Strout? Let them handle this. I think the discussion is worth having, but at this point, I think we're exhausted on this. Let us trust the professionals and our directors and our staff to do this. We have a social media policy in place. End of story. I will go back to, I think this is a solution searching for a problem. Mr. Solomon, back to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your comments. I understand what you're saying. I would fact check you on the 5 states. That was true 3 weeks ago. That has changed significantly since then. 2, this is not about social media and the information they gather, although that's an issue. This is the fact that it's Chinese owned and that information. And regarding, has the city had any issue? I don't believe we have. Obviously, we would want to prevent it. But 2, I can tell you Forbes just had journalists, I believe their information was shared through TikTok. I believe TikTok, ByteDance, just released information. In fact, they fired 4 employees from ByteDance for their investigation. If their data, I forget how they harvesting or whatever of journalists. There's articles about that. It continues to go. But the reason is the United States Senate would disagree with you. All of them. They all agree. They don't agree on anything, but they all agree on this. The House of Representatives just passed this. Our state certainly took action, as did many others. I believe it might even be more than 16 now. It might be 19, but the last I heard was 16, and it just keeps kind of gathering steam. The whole reason this is here, because we're all concerned about cybersecurity, but whenever the state takes an action, our state takes an action, it just kind of makes me go, why did we do that? So that's why I reached out. Is this some sort of stunt, or is this legitimate? You find out it's legitimate. Then I reach out to our congressman. He had blocked the talk, which was a similar ban in the House of Representatives. Congressman Johnson said, they are not our friend. And the House of Representatives just recently, just as a couple of days ago, produced a ban for TikTok on government devices. So we have this at the federal level, we have it at various state levels, and particularly our state, which is the state that we're in. So just by logic is why I said we should consider this from the city's standpoint. So that's why this is here. And obviously, I don't want problems. Some of our customers that the city has, that the information that we have, are people that work with very sensitive information. I don't want anybody having access to that information on our networks. What people do on their own time, they can choose whether they have TikTok or not. There are plenty of other social media platforms out there. There are plenty of ways to get the word out. And part of the issue with TikTok is its popularity. Because if what they're saying about TikTok is true, and that many young people are using it, which I believe to be true. I believe it's 100 million users. If that is true, and if the threat is real, as we've heard from various entities, then it should get our concern. So this is not made up. This is based on others' actions. It's not like the city is the first to take this action and then the state and the federal government will follow our lead. We are following the lead of the federal government, of our own state. And so the city, any local authority should say, is this something we should consider? Now, everything that we do gives a directive to our great city staff. This does not at all undermine what they are doing. I believe Mr. Gilbert will write a policy that will work for them, but make sure that we are protecting the information, not just from those who wish to gather it and sell it, but those who wish to gather it and give it at request to a country that is currently not our friend. And that's the issue. It's a national security issue. That's why it's being raised. And so, not that Rapid City itself is some target, but just to say that it is just good policy. This is not politics, it's just good policy. And that is why we're following the lead of the federal and state government, and we are just looking to do the same. So I'll yield.
Mr. Nordstrom.
Oh, my notes just disappeared on me here. 1 second. Just another update for you is that there is a bipartisan law that's going in through the markup process on the Senate side. It's called the Updated Platform Accountability and Transparency Act, which would require digital platforms to fork over data for research projects approved by the federal agencies. So that's another one that's in progress. So if they're doing TikTok as the first step, I guess that's the one way we can do this. But this is a second way of additional concerns that should be raised as well because of the FBI director Wray saying that we should be concerned, but this isn't the only concern that we have. And so if this is just a way to start, I can go with that, but it's not the way we need to end. And then I trust our staff complicitly that they would be able to figure out a process to come up with a policy on this so that we're not interfering with grants as well. Because that's another area of concern, that if we don't do this or do that, then we get into this, what is called green mail, and I don't want to fall into that area of green. Another one, you have to Google it. But anyway, it has to do with blackmailing from the government agencies, and so we call it green mail because it affects federal dollars. So we want to be careful about that as well. So the other, and that's the latest information I've gotten here, and seems like daily there's additional information coming out. So I would trust our directors and staff to come up with a good policy, but this is only a start. Thank you.
Director Gilbert, before I go to you, I just have a quick question. Instead of just going through this whole ordeal, or Director Strout, couldn't we, the two of you, collaborate something just to enhance the policy? Wouldn't that be so much more simple?
Not in this case, no, because we are targeting a specific application. Even if we extended it, which might be a logical conclusion to a specific subset of applications that are owned by Chinese national companies. So the idea that we could omnibus a policy in that regard, I don't believe is something we could do. This is, for all intents and purposes, different than what a cybersecurity infrastructure does on a day-to-day basis, which is why it is here, and instead of just down in my office trying to figure out, is this needed? Is this valid for business? Should we block it? So that there is a, while I don't want to say this is a political issue, there is certainly a political arena for this because it is one specific application. The CIS controls which the city implements will, throughout the course of several years, force us to look at every single software application that is run on every single city device. So this is just a very focused approach, and that's why I believe that this has to some extent, be a little more guided by the policymakers in this case.
Mr. Evans?
Well, I have a couple of questions, and the kids know this from being at school, and I don't know what we have for monitoring services through the, city, intranet and internet and everything, the suppliers, and what you can put on the telephones that would work in order to monitor this stuff individually per device. I know that, if you hit an inappropriate site at Stevens, it's blocked, correct? I mean, it's just the way it is. It's been that way for 20 years, for half the time I taught there. And my other question is, how do we treat this particular one if an employee violates this? Is this like a death sentence as opposed to another? I mean, if they've got Grindr or Tinder or one of these other hookup things on their phone, I mean, is it going to be different than if they have TikTok on their phone? I mean, I don't know. It just seems when we come up with a policy like that, it's going to create all kinds of problems down the line if we make it an official ruling here that you can't control on an individual basis. I don't know. Do people use their devices to sell on eBay? Do they use it to do other things that are maybe not suitable? We can't do that through the school devices. Can we block it and not be allowing them to do it on the city devices? So, I mean, that's my question. How do we treat this particular one differently than if they violate one of the other policies? Do we have ideas concerning that? I mean, do we instantly fire that person? Do we what? It's opening up a whole can of words I don't think we want to deal with from the dais. I think it can be controlled through his office, the way we control other things that are deemed inappropriate. So
Maybe we'll
that's my
bring that
question.
forward to Monday's meeting. Okay. All right. Well, there's a motion on the floor. Motion by Mr. Solomon, a second by Mr. Roseland. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Me, 2, so 3-2. Do we want to share anything from our committee assignments, or do we just want to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, and a second by Mr. Nordstrom. Okay, we will bring this item as well as the others forward to Tuesday with the New Year's holiday. The regularly scheduled Monday meeting will be on Tuesday in these chambers at 6:30. Thank you for the great discussion. This is adjourned. Happy New Year.